So let's talk about the album cover. And I think the album cover I like 50 times better than the first one, to be honest. I think it looks really cool. And, maybe give us some insights on the concept behind that.
Well, I've always loved Hugh. I always thought it was really important to really deliver a package. If I'm going to sell you a $50 steak, I can't give you a $15 hamburger. I got to give you the
Right.
thing. I don't want to do the old, hey, go to the website and see my daughter's album cover for the band. I mean, I know a lot of bands do it and I understand money's tight, but again, in the very beginning, when I decided to do this, it was going to like go for it or don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was like, hey, Hugh, this is the name of the band. And he came up with it. There was nothing more to it than that. This one, though, my friend Mark Cubbage and I were discussing it. And we were throwing the old words back and forth
Mm-hmm.
and kind of came up with the alligator and the zipper and then kind of gave that to Hugh. And after tweaking this, tweaking that, and changing some things around, it was funny because the first one he sent back was basically the album, but it was like, Hugh, the zipper's not going to work like that. It was just functionally wrong. Like those little things that you pick up on. I'm thinking, great, we'll go with this. And the only thing people will talk about is the goofy album cover. But it was just classic you, putting the touches on it, the little sub stuff that he has going on. I think more importantly, it represents the style of the music. It's more aggressive. It has a little bit more teeth, excuse the expression, to it.
Yeah.
Beware, what is it? Bring on the bite or whatever. But if you swap those album covers on the albums, it wouldn't fit. It just wouldn't make sense. So
Yeah.
it just worked out great, But I promise there won't be any animals and teeth probably on the next one. I know it just wound up with the teeth. I don't know why, but no. I appreciate the comments, but yeah, I think also too. I always thought it was important to have an album cover when you're stacked in there with 6 or 7 other people, that one jumps out. And I've had a lot of comments from people or other people that aren't necessarily into music and don't even know it's an album cover, but see the art.
Yeah.
Kind of takes them back a little bit. It's definitely draws your eye to it. And I thought that was a very important part.
Sure. So I have a couple songs that I would say are my favorite tracks on this, and you guys can maybe touch on these. The last song in the album, Walk Away, I think is probably one of my favorite songs on the album. And, I know Ray, I believe, wrote the lyrics and stuff, but maybe talk a little bit about writing that specific track.
That's an interesting one because Jimmy had written a chord change that he thought could be in the verse. And I'm like, no, that's the chorus. And I took that and sort of tweaked it a little bit and added to it and sent it to Mark. And he's like, oh, yeah, there's the hook. So that was a collaboration, maybe an accidental one between Jimmy and me, but super happy with how it turned out. And Mark wanted it, you don't want to have every single thing be 140 beats per minute. So it's nice to sort of change it up. And I remember Mark and I talking about where we should sequence on the record. And I think Mark was right, put it at the end. When Redemption does a power ballad, we try and hide it in the middle of the fast stuff. And I think leaving it at the end sort of has more of a, and especially it helps because it's got such a great hook and Ray sounds fantastic on it. It's just a nice way to close the record out.
Yeah, that was one of those ones that actually started when I was screwing around with the whole electronic part in the beginning, just writing a groove with all the electronic stuff, and I sent it to Jimmy, and then he put that on that, and we were kind of off and running. And hopefully we can come back to this on the next album, and you'll look at me and say, Mark, you were right on this. But for some reason, I think that song is the silent lucidity for this band.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the one that, okay, you got the intro, you kind of got the Genesis, whatever vibe going on with the little percussion. Ray sounds amazing. It's a total power ballad. And then you've got the kind of distorted, freaky little drum fill, which is a little different than most things. And then boom, you're into this kind of halftime, open air, heavy, strong chorus, and it appeals to men and women. It's not like one of those songs where you go, what the hell is he talking about? Now I walk away. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. Like they say, Journey on steroids. But I don't know. I think if that one gets the right attention, it can really do some damage. I mean, up-tempo songs are great, and that's cool.
Yeah.
But when you flash back to the 80s and 90s, it was always the power ballad that put the band on the map.
Right.
So I don't know. It's one of my favorites as well. I think the lead, again, I can honestly say that I've listened to this at least 100 times over the last year or two or whatever it's been.
Mhm.
I usually go to the gym and listen to it daily. I really can't. I don't ever like tense up at any parts. You know what I mean? It just sounds amazing top to bottom, and I'm listening to it. I'm not just like bopping around. I'm like zoning in on everything while I'm doing it. It's just amazing. I mean, all the guys were just fantastic.
Yeah, and I get the tensing up part. You know, you listen to a part, man. I don't know if to what you like. One day you like it, one day you don't like it. You know, I've been there, but you know, as I said previously in an episode of the podcast, I don't really think like you have these singles that are out, but I think you could put any of these songs as a single. To be honest with you, very few times can I say that about a band. Most of the time, bands put out the wrong singles these days, but really, there isn't any song. You could have put any of these songs out as a single to, you know, really promote the record. I think they're all good enough to where you could do that. You know, the other song I really like a lot is "Learning to Fly." The second track on the album. That's one that I absolutely. In fact, when I first listened to the record, that was the first song that really like jumped out at me a lot. You know, they all did eventually, but that one, you know, and again, when I listen to albums, what it tends to happen is I'll listen to it and then I get to like this song I really like, and then I go and listen to that song like 10 more times before I get to the rest of the record. And that track specifically falls into that category.
Cool. I think the fact that you're saying the 10 singles, you know, on the record is the strength of this album, the strength of this band. It's not like, well, these four are great. This is kind of cool. And then what were you thinking on those two? It's kind of, it was, again, I can't stress enough when you deal with pros and that are all going in the same direction and they all get it. It just happens to work out. It's, you know, and there's a magic there. You know, I mean, if you had a bass player that just, you know, sat on the E train, let's say, and was a great guy and could play well, but it wouldn't be the same. It's just sometimes you put those ingredients together and you get lucky and how it works. And everybody's taken the role and they know what their role is. And no one needs to go outside of it for ego's sake or whatever. And it's magical. I mean, and I've heard it from a lot of people when they hear this record, they go, it sounds like a band that's been together 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know? That doesn't happen all the time.
No, I can agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Nothing Is Over, the first single. What was it about that track that you wanted to pick that as the first song to put out there?
I love that. Just speaking personally, that was the first riff that I wrote for this. I love that riff. I love it in particular because Mark added this rhythmic echo back to the guitar part, and I think that just sort of sealed for me that us working together could really be super, super cool. As for picking it, you know, I think it is first of all, a huge compliment to say that any one of the songs could have been picked for the single. And that was certainly Mark's stated desire at the beginning. Every one of these should be friendly and accessible with a big hook, and it can be as aggressive as we want to be as long as it's song first. And sort of that is where we landed. You know, I think we had our thoughts on 4 or 5 that were particularly strong, and we sent it to the label, and the label came back with the 3 that we're launching with. But you know, I'm happy for people to hear all of them.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter though was it wasn't easy because, like you said, I mean, you could definitely, without a doubt, go with Fire Away. You could have. We went with I Am Numb for the second, but that could have been the first.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just kind of goes down the list. You know, but I do think it's a really cool thing, and this was Nick's call. You know, usually when bands are doing singles, you know, everything's kind of like up tempo and like, you know, energy, and that's cool. I mean, your first one absolutely, I think, should be like that. You can't really open with Now I Walk Away or anything like that, and you usually don't power ballad as a single, anyways. But Nick's idea for the third one, for The Remedy, which is not a, you know, booga-tugga, chicka-chicka-chicka-chicka, you know, up-tempo kind of song, but it shows such a great side of the band. Mass, of course. But just the greatest cool original guitar part that Nick has going on. I'm not going to say it's funk, but it's not your traditional stuff, you know, and it really shows the songwriting variants as compared to like every song kind of sounds the same, but we changed the key and this one's at halftime. Okay. It really shows, but his call to go with the third one, with the Remedy is really awesome. I thought, at first I was going, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And the more and more I listened to it, I thought, oh yeah, he knows what he's talking about on this one.
I mean, it's all subjective and maybe a lucky guess. I just love that song. I think the hook is fantastic. Ray sounds amazing. I love the melody. It's just it's a great tune.
If you ever talked about $1 million hook, there it is.
Yeah.
That one's right. That's $1 million hook. But the thing that I really actually dig about that song though is there's a funkiness to it. There's a I don't know what. It's not the Chili Peppers. It's not that. It's just there's a certain something. I think it's in that picking pattern that you play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it adds it. And then at the same time, we're all not like heavy metal slamming it down. We're kind of playing a little funky behind it too.
Yep.
But,
right.
Yeah, that's a great song. That really is a great song.
Hey everybody, Tony here from the Metal Command podcast. Again, I appreciate your support. Since 1998, I have hosted this show in one form or another, starting off in radio and now in the podcast format. Again, thanks for watching. And if you like what you see and hear on this show, by all means, please hit the subscribe button, hit the little bell to be notified anytime I do post a video. And if you see this program on any other form of social media, please give me a follow there. Again, I always appreciate your support.